And now, we are very excited to introduce our very special guest of the evening, who really needs no introduction. She is an Oscar, Grammy, Emmy, and Tony Award-winning actress, singer, and performer. Over the course of a 70-plus year career, she is best known for her role as Anita in the 1961 West Side Story. She will be seen in the Steven Spielberg-directed retelling of West Side Story later this year. Many also know her for her spirited performances in The Electric Company, the groundbreaking educational children's television show. In addition to performing, she's also been an advocate for many civic, cultural, and charitable movements, focusing on racial equity, hunger, early childhood education, and higher education for students of color. Please welcome via Zoom, Ms. Rita Moreno.
I was asked to join you this evening. I did some sleuthing, and I checked you out, and learned happily that you are a community of volunteers working on behalf of the health, welfare, and benefits of children in need in Oakland. So that's a good place for me to be. And it's not a new place, but it's a good place to be. So here I am. Honestly, let me start back a little bit. I had no idea that I loved children so much until I had a child. And knowing how self-absorbed people in my profession are, I was actually worried, having been in therapy for a number of years, I was kind of worried that I would somehow not pay enough attention to this new little stranger in my belly. Would I be a good mom? Can I handle this? And especially after what happened to be a 24-hour labor. But the moment that my husband put this little girl named Fernanda Luisa into my arms, I knew that I was hers. And I began to cry, not for the obvious reasons. I began to cry because I thought if anyone tries to hurt this little child, I will kill them. I remember that. I will never forget that. And I can only tell you that breastfeeding was the happiest things that happened to my life. I ended up getting a pinched nerve in my neck because I was always looking down at her. I couldn't get enough of her. So from the day she was born, you could say that I started working in my profession for her in a very special way to make her proud. And it's why I wanted to do a show called The Electric Company, which is a marvelous show done by the Children's Television Workshop. And I remember very clearly that all my friends and colleagues said, "Are you crazy? Don't do a children's show. You will never work as an adult again in your business." And I remember saying back to them, wait a minute. I'm talking about teaching here. I'm talking about doing a service, a community service, because I can tell you right now, we were not getting paid a lot of money. That's not why any of us were really doing this in the first place. And I said to my friends, because it's on television doesn't cheapen its value. Isn't teaching children to read a basic human service? And I got to tell you that some of my best fans came from that show, and I still have them. Isn't that a great? Anyway, let me tell you a little story about being on The Electric Company and having children for an audience. I was going up the escalator at Bloomingdale's in New York City, because that's where the show was being done. And a little girl, a tiny little girl, could not have been more than 5, was staring at me. She had turned around. We were going up, and she just kept looking at me. And I thought, well, she's seen me on the show. She's going to say something. And when we stepped off, she said to me, "The electric cup of tea." which, by the way, a lot of kids said they didn't get it right. The electric company. And I said, that's right. And she said to me, she's looking way up and she says, how do you get out? Which really meant, how do you get out of the box that she was watching? And I went into this long discussion. Well, honey, you see, there's a big room with bright lights and it's called a television studio. And they have a camera there, sort of like the one that what your mommy takes pictures of you with. And, then they broadcast, and I thought that's not a good word, but it's the only one I know, your picture. And then eventually it comes on the television where you can see me. And she looked up at me and she said, but how did you get out? My best audiences, I loved it. The old song says that he holds the whole world in his hands, the little tiny babies in his hands. Well, here's those news. Here's the big news. Those tiny little babies turn into grown-ups. And those grown-ups very often are alone in this world because of their color or because of their nationality. And it's up to those of us who care to look after them in whatever way we can, which is, I know, why we're here this evening. And just like you, I'm tremendously concerned about the most vulnerable among us, their health, their education, their well-being, especially the poor, the immigrants, the refugee, the vulnerable. And despite what the other side says, they are not lazy, and they're not sitting home waiting for their welfare check. That just makes me enraged when I hear that. And we know who says things like that. And there are a lot of them, unhappily, more than we ever maybe dreamed. There's lots of those people. So we have to do what we can to help the people who really need the help, and we know who they are. I came to this country when I was 5 years old with my mommy and a set of poor people's matched luggage, which of course were shopping bags. I didn't know it, but my mom was fleeing what was then the stinging poverty of Puerto Rico. My mom was looking for a better life for the two of us. She did something extraordinary for that time. She divorced my father because, among other things, he was a womanizer and he wasn't really helping her out in any way whatsoever. So she did something amazing. She came to this country after the divorce, left me with him and my grandparents, and got a job very quickly because she sewed so well, doing sweatshop work as a seamstress in one of those sweatshops. And when she had made enough money, she went back to Puerto Rico on the same ship, by the way, and brought me back to the United States with the explanation that we're going to go to a place where everybody is good to you and you have opportunities, and it's all going to be much, much better than it is now. Didn't happen that way, but it was an extraordinary experience. It was freezing when I got to America, which was New York. I had never known a winter. I had never seen trees without leaves on them. And I remember asking my mom on the bus on the way to stay with an aunt of hers, what happened to the trees? And she said, oh, honey, it's called winter. It was a place where I discovered snow with such glee. I discovered rooftops, just like a West Side Story, where we played in the snow. I ran from the bullies at school who were calling me spick and garlic mouth. And it was sort of like West Side Story. Anyway, every day of my childhood, my mom, Rosa Maria, left Our cockroach-infested apartment walked me to school. And then she climbed the bus that carried her from 181st Street and Wadsworth Avenue to 42nd Street and 5th, which was the heart of the garment district. And there she worked for hours, pumped the treadle, wound the bobbins, and for hours and hours, chalked the hems. That was my mommy, the sweatshop seamstress. She was the working poor, the people they're now calling lazy. It was backbreaking work, but it was a job and it paid the rent. So mentors, role models, they didn't exist back then. And certainly not for a little girl like me. I never had a mentor. People assume that everybody has a mentor, especially when they're in show business, not me. So that's really essentially why I am here to celebrate and support your good work of hope, labor, love, and I want to encourage you to keep the faith that you are, and you will make a difference. I have a friend who belongs to this organization, Annie Rosenberg. So for the business at hand, let me get to the point. This is a fundraiser, right? So whoever can, open your checkbook, grab your calendar, volunteer, give some greenbacks, money to help out. This is important work, but I don't have to tell you that. But you got to make it happen. That's you and I have to make it happen. I'm forever moved when a movie, play, or a real life, you see the bailiff bark at this, the judge enters and he says, all rise. It reminds me that in the presence of justice, all do rise. Those of us who care. That's a matter of justice for all. Thank you for putting up with me and my pieces of paper. And let's hope that we make some real money for something very real and very important that you all know about. I don't have to tell you that, do I? And hi, Annie.
Wow. Let's give it up for Ms. Rita Moreno.